Valentines, welcome back. Today we're going to be stitching our adorable doors in the hoop machine embroidery design. This fun project is made in two hoopings. The first hooping you do the door, the second hooping you do the cute little banner. And we're making this project with marine vinyl. You can also use cork or embroidery vinyl, as long as it's sturdy. The only vinyl we don't recommend is heat transfer vinyl or other types of vinyl that are made for electric cutting machines because they're just not sturdy enough. Let's go over the supplies for this project. First of all, we're going to need a little hanger to hang the banner from. So we've got a cute little heart-shaped button on this one, and on our smaller one we have a little hook, and the hook is part of a hook and eye set. You can buy these at a fabric store, and they're made for bras, but they make the cutest little door hanger. The other materials we're using are the white marine vinyl for the door, front and back. We also found red marine vinyl, we're going to use that for the banner, and pink marine vinyl, which we're going to use for the heart. You'll also need clear vinyl so that you can have the little see-through window, and we recommend 12 gauge vinyl. Anything lower or a lower number vinyl will shred. Your embroidery machine needle will just puncture and tear it. We also use ribbon for the hangers and tearaway stabilizer because we want to make sure we can remove all of the stabilizer behind the window so that it's completely see-through. All right, let's move to the machine and go ahead and get started. Okay, we have our design loaded to the machine and we have tearaway stabilizer hooped. We're going to go ahead and sew stitch sequence 1 to stitch a placement line for fabric A. So this actually stitched placement lines for the banner and for the heart. You'll also notice 3 other small placement lines that's stitched in this step. Those are going to be used in a subsequent step when you're working on the back of the hoop. So just take note of those now. We're going to place fabric A over the top placement line, the banner, and we're going to go ahead and tape it in place. And then we'll sew stitch sequence 2 to tack down the banner. Okay, so we have the banner fabric stitched down. We're going to change the thread and we're going to sew stitch sequence 3, which is the little hearts on the banner. Okay, so now we're going to change our thread. I'm going to change to white thread for the wording, and we're going to sew stitch sequence 4 for the wording. Okay, next we're going to remove the hoop from the machine but leave our project hooped, and we're going to tape the ribbon onto those placement lines that we stitched in stitch sequence 1. So we're going to take the medium-sized length of ribbon and we're going to be placing it over the 2 placement lines on the top of the banner. And you want to tape above the project outline there, and then just bring that around, tape it to the other side as well. Okay, so we have the little hanger for the banner. Now we're going to go ahead and tape down the shortest piece of ribbon. And this one is going to go over that bottom placement line on the banner, and it's going to overlap the heart. So we'll go ahead and tape it in place with about 1/4 inch over the placement line at the bottom of the banner to project outlines. If your ribbon extends down past the bottom of the heart, you need to trim it off to about the center of the heart. And then we're going to be placing 2 of the remaining fabrics. You're going to have fabric A for the back of the banner. You're going to tape that in place, and if you need to use more tape at the top, you can do that. We're going to now place fabric C over the back of that heart-shaped placement line, and you just want to tape it so that it's secure when you put your hoop back on the machine. You don't want the materials to shift. So there you go. We're going to turn it over to the front, and I'm just going to press down on that tape to make sure it's nice and secure there. And then we're going to be placing fabric D. We're going to center that over that heart outline. Okay, so we're ready to put this back on the machine and sew the final stitch sequence in this hooping. So the final stitch sequence is finished on hooping 1. We have the banner piece, which I've gone ahead and removed most of the stabilizer from and all the tape. I did leave the stabilizer in behind the ribbon at the top and the ribbon between the two, just to make it easier to avoid cutting through the ribbon. I'm just going to trim it to about an 1/8 inch seam allowance, and we're going to start with the sides on this one. When you're going around the bottom of the banner there's a ribbon, remember, between the heart and the bottom of the banner. So I'm just going to slide my scissors behind there. I'm going to push the stabilizer and the heart fabric to the back, and I'm going to just cut through one layer there. And then of course we've got that top ribbon there, so we're going to fold that back, and then we'll trim the back of that one. And this one's a little bit tricky since it's this inverted curve. So you just want to go slow, holding that ribbon back. And we'll do the same on the heart. And if you have a small hoop, again, you can cut these seam allowances a little bigger to make the bigger heart or the bigger banner. And you could do these in any order. So we'll go ahead and complete the rest, and then I'll show you how to attach it. For now, we're going to put this aside so that I can show you how to do hooping number 2. We have our design loaded to the machine, and we have our tearaway stabilizer hooped on the machine, so let's go ahead and get started with part 2. We have our placement lines in place, and we have the main placement line for the door, the vinyl for the door. We have the inner placement line, or the inner placement box, for the clear vinyl, and then both on the top left and the top right there are 2 tiny little placement lines which we're going to use for the ribbon in a subsequent step. We're going to be placing the clear vinyl, and when I cut my clear vinyl, I always leave the tissue paper that comes with it on the back so that I can see it, because it's very easy to lose a clear piece of vinyl on your sewing table. We're going to center that over that smaller placement box, and we'll go ahead and tape it in place. Just make sure it's nice and flat, and we'll put this back on the machine, and the next stitch sequence will tack down that clear vinyl. We're going to remove the hoop and just trim the vinyl to about a 1/4 inch seam allowance around that tack down line. Okay, so we're going to be placing our first piece of vinyl on this hooping, and we'll go ahead and tape that in place. We'll go ahead and put the hoop back on the machine, and we'll sew stitch sequence 3 to tack down that vinyl piece. All right, let's go ahead and sew stitch sequence 3. Okay, so now that that stitch sequence is done, it's going to go around and do that cute little heart quilting. You can change your thread at this point, or you can just leave the same color in like we're going to do. Okay, we're going to go ahead and stitch the doorknob next. You can change thread at this point. I'm going to leave the red in just for a nice fun red Valentine look. Okay, you may have noticed when the doorknob stitched, it went over itself a few times, And that is part of the design. That gives your doorknob that little elevated dimensional look. At this point, we're going to remove the hoop from the machine and we're going to turn it to the back. Notice the placement lines that's stitched in the first stitch sequence, the little diagonal placement lines on the top left and top right of the project. We're going to be placing the ribbon over those lines. So you're going to place it about 1/2 inch over the line towards the center, or into the project rather. And you want to tape that above the project outline. And then you just bring the other end to the other side and you'll tape that side down too, above that project line. So those are in place, and then we'll place the final piece of vinyl, fabric F, over the project. And this is going to go right side up. And you want to tape it well enough so it won't shift when you put your hoop back on the machine. So all 4 sides here. And you want to make sure that that piece is centered over the project outline. Turn it to the front, and I like to give it a little extra press to get the stabilizer stuck down to the tape. And we'll put this back on the machine and sew stitch sequence 6 to tack down that back piece and also to create a cutting line on the vinyl. So we're going to go ahead and remove the hoop, and don't remove the project from the hoop because we've still got a little bit of stitching to do. We're going to trim out the vinyl within the cutting line on the front and then also on the back. So beneath this piece of vinyl is the clear vinyl. You don't want to snip through that. So I generally just in the center will poke my scissors through just a little bit and lift it up slightly. And that should keep the clear vinyl underneath intact. So I like to just take my duckbill scissors and trim to the corners on all of the sides first. And you can see there's the clear vinyl there. You want to get right up to the corners without snipping the stitch line. If you do, it's not the end of the world. We still have a zigzag that's going to go around the entire cutting line there, and a satin stitch. So if you snip one of the stitches, not a big deal. Just try not to. So I'm going to do my duckbill applique scissors, and I have my blade under the fabric, and I'm cutting counterclockwise. And that duckbill is actually helping to lift that fabric up as I get close to the end of it. Marine vinyl is such a fun material to work with. It cuts so easily, it sews easily, and it comes in lots and lots of different colors and textures, which you can find at your local shops or online or on Etsy. Okay, so we have the window cut out from the front. You may be able to see the shine on the clear vinyl. We're going to turn the hoop over to the back, and it's going to be a little harder for you to see because I had white bobbin thread, but we're going to cut inside that placement line on the back too so that we can see through the window. You're going to use the same method, and on this side, underneath the vinyl on this side is the tearaway stabilizer. So you want to just be careful. You can snip through the tearaway stabilizer, but don't snip through the vinyl on the front. So again, I'm going to do the same technique where I'm cutting all the way around into the corners. We're going to cut again right up to that stitch line. And there you can see we're exposing the tearaway stabilizer. And that is going to stay in the project. We'll need it to stabilize the sashing that we'll be stitching. And you'll notice I'm using Pickle Pie's duckbill applique scissors. And what's so nice about our scissors is they have a coating. The pink is actually a non-slip and anti-fatigue coating, and it's the same coating that's used on surgeon's tools. So if you're doing a couple of doors, your hand is not going to hurt, because with the scissors that don't have that coating, I always get a little divot here and my hand hurts from it. All right, so we have that cutting line cut out. Again, leave the tearaway stabilizer in place. and we're going to put the hoop back on the machine, and we're going to stitch the window frame and the sashing next. We're going to use white thread for a traditional look, but you can use whatever color you'd like. Okay, so the final stitch sequence is done. We'll go ahead and remove the hoop from the machine, and at this point we can go ahead and remove the tape and the stabilizer from the project. All right, we have most of the stabilizer removed. I just want to show you a little tip. Don't tear off the stabilizer that is in front of that ribbon piece, just to protect the ribbon when I cut around the project. When you're cutting around the top of the project, I fold that stabilizer back, so with that, with the back vinyl and the ribbon, and then I'm going to trim around only that top layer, and that's going to help me keep that ribbon intact and not cut through it. So I just cut through that one layer there, and then I'll go ahead and fold the ribbon back along with the stabilizer, and I'll cut the back piece. Trim off that back piece of vinyl, and you want to be very careful when you get near the ribbons. At this point you can tear that off now that our ribbon, or our vinyl is trimmed at the top and the ribbon is intact. With the other three sides, you can trim both layers at one time. Saves some nice time there. You can do this with your scissors or shears, or you can use a rotary cutter and a mat for a perfectly straight cut there. And I'm leaving about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance there. If you have a small hoop and your door is tiny and you want to make it a little bigger, you can cut the seam allowance a little bit bigger. There's our door, and see, it's not see-through yet, so we have one more step to do. We're going to go ahead and remove the tearaway stabilizer. And with my little thread snips, I am just gently getting under there just to get it started. At this point you can lift it up and then tear that off pretty cleanly. So we'll do the same here. We'll just start in on an edge where you see a lot of perforations from the stitches. And then I can just get my finger under there and tear it away. So we're going to continue on the other two sides, and you definitely want to be careful not to poke your snips. Okay, so your door is ready. You see the cute little see-through window. Now we're going to either sew a button or a little hook on to attach the banner. You can replace this banner. You can have the two different sayings, and just on different days you can switch them out. But in order to hang it, you need either a button or one of those little bra hooks, and we're going to sew this on at the top of the project. You'll notice where the quilting comes to a point here. I designed it so that you know exactly where your button should go, and your button should sit on that point. So we're going to just try it out and look. Yep, that looks good. We're going to hand sew that button on, and vinyl is actually, marine vinyl, embroidery vinyl is very, very easy to hand stitch. It does seem stiff, and you might wonder, you know, how you're ever going to do it, but it's super simple. It's almost like stitching through butter. In order to hide the knot, we're going to go through the top two layers, so that knot is going to get trapped between those two layers so that you don't have it on the back of your door, because the back of your door is almost as cute as the front. Doesn't have the quilting, but it's completely finished. I'm going to simply go through the top of the project between the two layers, and I'll aim to come out on the point of the quilting. And as you can see, you can just tuck that in there and your knot is hidden. You'll go through the front of the button, and I like to go through the back at the same time, and I'm going to sew that in place. But you'll sew through that